Welcome to the Movement Upgraded podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jen Hostler, licensed physical therapist and certified strength and mobility coach. Here you can expect to hear about all things movement. The Movement Upgraded podcast is a blend of the science of strength training, rehab, and mobility, mixed with the personal and professional experience to provide you with the steps you need to keep your body pain-free and moving well, so you can do what you love forever. Hello. Welcome back. We are doing a little different thing today with this episode. So a little while back, I had shared on Instagram something along the lines of what I thought I was going to learn in DPT school versus like what is actually helpful for people to get better. And I had a large amount of responses to that. And I also get a lot of questions from trainers or coaches or massage therapists asking if they should go to PT school or asking some form of question about physical therapy school. And so I want to make a post about this. So I want to make a podcast episode, actually, not a post, podcast episode about this where I can talk about what I learned in DPT school versus like what I expected to learn, and kind of some of the misunderstandings that we have in like what a physical therapist really learns, what they do. And hopefully this can kind of answer your question if you're interested in DPT school or something along those lines. And if you're listening to this and you still have more questions, please reach out to me. I'm super happy to help people very often if they're considering it. It's just something that I think is really important. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what I thought I was going to learn in PT school. So what I thought I was going to learn in physical therapy school was movement. I just thought we were going to really dive into kinesiology and movement and rehab, and it was just going to be lots of that. And I was in for a rude awakening. I remember in physical therapy school, I was so frustrated on a regular basis at like the lack of movement that we were doing. Not only was I not moving, we weren't learning about movement. I hated the way a lot of our classes were set up. I couldn't believe I was spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to basically kind of like memorize PowerPoints. There's a lot of things. I had a lot of anger in PT school, and I almost think I moved through like all of the stages of grief because I was really angry for a really long time until I reached some form of like sadness, and like I was really upset because I was just like, I'm spending so much money going into so much into debt. And then I was like, I'm not learning what I want to. And once I came to terms with that, I realized, well, I've got to learn the things that I need to learn to do what I want to do elsewhere. And so in PT school, I actually was going out and learning a ton in continuing education courses. It was very frowned upon by my professors, and they were not quiet about letting me know about that. They, at one point, I do remember I said, hey, I'm wondering if I was asking if I could miss class for a day, right? There's a lot of toxic bullshit, and you're going to hear me cuss probably a few times because I still have some anger about physical therapy school, but there's a lot of that toxic. It's a very toxic environment in higher education, and without getting too political. And so I was asking for permission to miss a day of class where my grades were fine, by the way. I did really well in PT school. I had A's, B's. I don't think I even got a C. Maybe I did, but we didn't, I think I only failed like 2 things. And in PT school, you can fail certain things because you get multiple tries because it's really, really difficult, a lot of the things. And that's like a whole different story. But I did fine in PT school. So even when I did fail, actually, one of my professors was like, I was really surprised to see your name on the bottom of the list. Like, what happened? And so I did fine. And so I asked for a day, and they were like, well, what do you need it for? Which was really interesting because I had other classmates who were able to just like kind of not show up for class, or they were late, and there was just a lot of like, there's a lot of inconsistency with how there was like, I don't know, an approach to this type of thing. Regardless, I asked to go to a continuing education course, and I thought, there should be some like, wow, that's cool. You're representing our school. You're wanting to learn more. You're paying extra to do that. Like, that's probably hard as a student, whatever. No, it was that you shouldn't be doing that. And I was like, what do you mean? And they said, well, you don't have you're a young student. You don't have necessarily a great head on your shoulders. of some way, shape, or form they said that. Not like, you're not smart, but kind of in a way they said that. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were just like, well, there's just a lot of information out there. I just want to let you know that I was graduating in 9 months at that time. 9 months is enough time to grow a human, but it's not enough to really change too significantly. And so if that was really interesting to me to learn that to hear that, because I was like, well, if you don't think I have a good head on my shoulders, like, shouldn't that be back on you for not helping me learn how to like clinically reason? Like, it was very interesting, and there was like a lot of fear and scarcity mindset around those things, and I just didn't like that. And there was no good communication with what he was talking about. There was a lot of like hidden meaning, and I don't like that type of communication. I think it's really important to be upfront and honest, and it was really frustrating and disappointing, but at that point I had already expected that from my professors. They were already, a lot of them were frustrating me anyways with how our school was set up and the attitudes a lot of them had, and there was some blatant, very like not amazing things at the school that I went to. And it's very common in higher education. So with that being said, I went to a continuing education course, and I actually had started a club at my school, which I had to go get approved by all of these people, which is just like crazy to me, because I'm just wanting to create a group of people where we can learn together and talk about things and go above and beyond, because I was trying to get us ready for the real world, which is like way different than what they were teaching us in PT school, which I'll get to in a minute because this is a very long story. But I would take those continuing ed courses and I would bring them back and I would teach other classmates and we would work through it, which helped me learn it a little bit more, helped me get my hands on bodies, helped me coach a little bit, helped me educate. And so probably preparing me to do a podcast, which I didn't realize. But I was doing that, and it was just not only was there no support, but it was like frowned upon, and I wasn't well liked by a lot of my professors because of that. And I think it's because I challenged things and they don't like that. But that's really unfortunate, because that's how we learn and grow. And so needless to say, I thought that I was going to learn a lot, and I had to go out into continuing education courses to learn things. And I learned more from some of the fitness people and the strength coaches than I did from some of my professors. And I use a lot more of the stuff that I learned from my basic courses in PT school and the books, and then fitness, in my background in fitness, then really I have learned in PT school. And that's just kind of the hard fact. And that's really frustrating when you're going to school and you think you're going to learn how to help people get better. The other thing that I thought I was going to learn in PT school is manual therapy. And I thought I was going to learn how to fix people. I went to PT school thinking, okay, yes, PT, like when I had an experience in physical therapy when I was 14 and tore my ACL, and went through rehab, it was a lot of exercise. He put his hands on me a little bit to like stretch my knee, move. I don't even know if he moved my kneecap. I can't recall at this point. But I was like, okay, so I'm going to need to learn exercise and movement. And then I studied exercise and I wanted to learn more about that. I loved kinesiology. I loved all the podcasts I consumed where they were talking about how sometimes they would be helping people rework their squat, or sometimes they would be helping people like create an exercise program that's going to help them because they have low back pain. Like, there's a lot of interesting things when I would listen to podcasts and consume content from other people who were providers at that point. This was back when blogs were really big because social media was not. I don't even think Instagram was a thing back then. And so I would read a lot of blogs and I would listen to a lot of podcasts, and I was like, this is so cool. And so that's what I thought PT school is going to be, right? We're going to learn a lot about exercise and coaching. And then I was going to learn manual skills. And the other reason I thought manual skills was really important to learn and how I was going to fix people is because I got the notion and the idea from that from the people that I learned from. And they said, basically the understanding in my head as somebody who was more in the fitness industry before I went into PT school was the difference between a physical therapist or a clinician and a personal trainer is that clinicians can do manual therapy. And so in my head, I thought that meant that's like the thing that clinicians use to get people better versus personal trainers. So I thought that's what physical therapy school was going to be. We barely had any manual therapy. It was not a lot of manual therapy. I practiced a bit and we would kind of practice different things. But a lot of my manual therapy that we learned, I don't even utilize, but we barely touched it on it, right? Like I barely had that. A lot of my courses were actually like how to transfer somebody from a bed to a wheelchair, or how to I'm trying to think of like what else we did in our labs. I just there was like a lot like we did a little bit of gait analysis where we watched somebody walk, but like that was barely anything. It was just like a lot of group projects and papers and things like that, and a lot of busy work, and then just a lot of like memorizing random things. And then we learned how to debride oranges, because apparently wounds are in a physical therapist scope of practice in some states. So we learned about wounds, and I was like, I didn't sign up to be a nurse. Like, this is not movement. And it was astronomical to me, like how frustrated I was. And so we barely learned any of the things I wanted to. So I went out and I learned on my own, and then I graduated and was like, all right, how am I going to get people better? And in the past 5 years of practice, I've realized that one, the manual stuff didn't matter anyways. So originally I was upset about it, and I thought that was like how I was supposed to help people, because otherwise I should have just became a personal trainer if my goal, if all I needed to do was help people move better, right? So I graduated and was like, okay, so what am I going to do? So I would do a little manual therapy, but then I started to realize that's not really what people need. And it's been almost 5 years, so it'll be 5 years this year of practice, and through that I have learned that what actually gets people out of pain and better has nothing to do with manual therapy, and it has everything to do with my ability to listen and validate their concerns, my ability to educate on current research and make sure that they are not afraid of movement and fearful, because that is very important in pain, my ability to prioritize and kind of have like a bird's eye view of all of the forms of, or all the contributors to health and wellness, because those really affect pain, and pain is not this thing that is separate from that. It's actually like your general fitness, your sleep, your stress, all of those things, your all the biopsychosocial pieces, your spirituality, your environment, your social connections, all of that really also plays a part. And so my ability to look at all those things and figure out which are more important is also really important. And then my ability to coach people through lifestyle habits and help people figure out how to work those things through, or work those things into their lives, right? And then programming knowledge, right? So that's going to be more of the movement and understanding, like movement and mobility programming, which is what you hear a lot about what I do. Those things are really what help me get people better. But I put movement at the bottom of the list because it's important, but it's not always the first thing that people need when they've been in chronic pain. And movement doesn't matter if I can't build trust and get buy-in with people that I work with. And so you'll notice that manual therapy is not on there. However, a lot of people will seek out physical therapists because they think that the manual therapy is what they really need. And so what's interesting to me is that we still have this viewpoint in fitness and a lot of things that the difference between a physical therapist and a personal trainer is very much manual therapy. And it's so much more than that. Now that I've gone through school, because of all of the things, because of the 3 unexpected things I learned in DPT school, right? A long-winded way to say all of that. So let's kind of tackle those, and we'll kind of circle back to tie this in. But what I really did learn in PT school that I am appreciative of is, number one, the ability to disseminate information, to read and apply research. So I already kind of was involved in research a little bit. I had a research internship for an occupational therapist professor in undergrad, and I actually got a trip paid to go present the research that I was helping her with in San Diego, in that, I think that was like junior year in college. And that was my first ever plane ride, which was really terrifying and really cool. So I got to do that. And so I was already involved in research. I really liked research. I like words and reading and understanding things and applying them and ideas. And that's just like, it makes me so happy, which is, you probably noticed, is a lot of what we do in this podcast. And so in PT school, I really did develop that ability. Like we were forced, we read so much research, and I do appreciate that about the school that I went to. They forced us to kind of figure that out. I don't know if they were great at getting the critical thinking piece to apply to actual clinical practice. I did feel like there was a lot of expectations of kind of regurgitation, like mimicking. So they would teach us different approaches to rehab and just expect us to use those approaches instead of actually clinically think. But I think part of that is just because you need experience, which is what you're supposed to gain in your clinicals. And so I am not super mad about that. I do think that is something that we learn in PT school and DPT school and a lot of programs. That is a big difference between maybe somebody who is a personal trainer and somebody who went into a doctoral program. So I think that's something that we just don't notice or understand or see. So, and that's something that you can develop without going to physical therapy school, by the way. But it's not easy and it's a lot of work. By the way, DPT school was a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 4 every single day with a 1 hour lunch break. We were in class that long, and then we had homework and tests and studying on top of that. So think about your normal job and then coming home and then doing all of your homework. And this is like what people did to go through undergrad and things like that, except it's more intense because a professional program, I forget how many credits I graduated with, but I want to say we were in like 20 credits plus per semester. On average, we usually do like 12 in like to be full-time in undergrad. So it's pretty intense. So that's the first thing, is the ability to disseminate information, read and apply research, which really is what matters most, because there's no one true way to tackle rehab and to do things. It's really important that we're constantly reading. And what I learned in DPT school was that the goal of PT school is to get you to graduate and pass your boards and keep people safe. That's it. Beyond that, it's supposed to give you the tools and the skills you need to figure out what you need to help people in the realm that you need. So that's really important, and my expectations were different, and I didn't understand that going into it. So if you're listening to this, you're a pre-PT student, you're a PT student right now, or you are thinking about going to PT school, keep that in mind as you're moving forward. The second thing that I'll say that I learned that I'm thankful for, which I think this is something that is just like you have to develop to get through PT school, is, I also hate this word, but we're going to unpack that, is the idea of being professional. And that word is used and it's kind of weaponized against a lot of people, and what it typically ends up meaning is not what I'm referring to. The idea of being professional to me is the ability to be timely, be able to interact with a person, and have a high level of emotional intelligence developed, and follow through, have high integrity, things like that. Sometimes it's kind of inexplainable a little bit, but when you interact with somebody, they should be reliable and trustworthy and things like that. And I think DPT school really does help cultivate a professional, and I think this is often the difference between personal trainers and somebody who's gone through a doctoral program. This is also the difference between a personal trainer who had a like online certification and somebody who takes their job seriously and goes the extra mile, right? That's the difference. And I can tell in general fitness, if you're listening to this and you're a coach or you're a personal trainer, you're probably not one of the ones who don't take things seriously. I'm sure that you are one of the professional ones. So this is something that you may have cultivated in your undergrad, because I think my undergrad did a pretty good job at that too. So that's the second thing, is just some degree of professionalism, showing up, following through, going the extra mile, really treating people well. I think that physical therapy does try to help you develop that. And in PT school, for me, that's one of the skills that I definitely developed and was thankful for. As well as emotional intelligence, I had to learn how to manage my emotions. You're in a high level of stress. Some of the hardest stuff that I've ever done before was go through PT school and pass and go and take boards. It's very extremely terrifying. You have a lot on the line. It feels like you have a lot on the line. It is a lot of information, and you feel dumb all the time. So just so you know, that is part of, because of that, you have to like cultivate a lot of emotional intelligence. You have to learn how to not be super stressed. And then you have so many group projects. You have to learn to work with people who are different than you. And that helps to typically produce some amount of emotional intelligence, which is absolutely necessary if you're going to work with another person. And I think that more coaches and clinicians would be better off if they worked on their emotional intelligence a little. Working on yourself goes a very long way. So the third thing that I wanted to talk about that I think is really important that I really developed and I'm thankful for in PT school is physiology. We really learned a lot about the human body in my school. The first year, I think the school that I went to was trying really hard to improve our profession, so I will give them credit for that. They were always trying to find ways to get physical therapists a little bit more respect. One of the things we see as a problem in the world is that medical doctors are unaware of what physical therapists do or what we're capable of, and they don't always have the best relationships with physical therapists, which means that they're not necessarily as up to date on like physical rehab and pain. And it's really important that they are, because they need to be able to direct their patients to physical therapists so that we aren't getting people on pain medication and over imaging people, which is typically where we are right now in this day and age. And general physicians and most medical doctors aren't experts in everything, even though we expect them to be. It's kind of silly to expect one human to know everything. So it's really important that we help them be educated on the things that we can do. And so in order to try to facilitate some of that, my school joined with the med school at our bigger university. And our first year of physical therapy school, we would have every single week, we went and took the med school courses. So all of their basic sciences, we were in med school basic sciences with them. So we really dove into all kinds of physiology in our first year. And we also did anatomy with them, and our cadaver lab where we were dissecting cadavers was with med students. It was usually a blend of 1 or 2 DPT students and 3 or 4 med students. And then we had a class that was called doctoring, which is where we learned how to interview patients and take an intake and communicate and really help facilitate kind of some of those baseline communication skills. And so we had small groups of that were headed by DPTs or MDs. And so because of that integration, I learned a lot about, and I think that's also part of physical therapy school no matter where you go, but we really dove into physiology and how the human body works, which was really, really helpful. And that information also helps the first thing that I said, which is the ability to disseminate information. So this is something that I didn't understand was what I would be learning and how it would help me in understanding things. So often what that means is when I program, I'm thinking of things at a deeper level than somebody who may not have this training. Now, that was something I didn't understand was important. And I just thought, like I'm going to learn like manual therapy skills to fix people. Like that was all that I understood. And so those 3 things are really, really important going through PT school. Like those are the 3 biggest things I feel like I really learned. Keep in mind there's different sectors of physical therapy. We have like neurological rehab where people who have strokes go through really intensive rehab. People with vertigo go through that type of rehab and vestibular issues. Spinal cord injury rehab. We have rehab specialties where people are in the hospital and they're acute care clinicians where they're making sure that people have cardiorespiratory systems and systems that are capable of moving and keeping them moving and watching their vitals and paying attention and being part of an integrative team in an acute care setting, which is in a hospital. And then we have physical therapists who do something similar to me where we're out in what we call orthopedic physical therapy, where we are just working in people with knee pain or somebody who had a surgery and needs rehab after to get back to what they're doing. We even have pelvic floor therapists, specialties which work specifically on one area of the body, which is the pelvic floor. They actually do more than that, but they work on pelvic floor dysfunctions. And so because of that, we had to integrate a lot of different types of things in physical therapy school. So I learned all of that a lot of basic information on all of those things too. And you do learn that when you go to physical therapy school. But I felt like it was very much focused on a lot more of that stuff than I wanted to learn. But it's also part of it, right? You get to specialize and you can specialize after. So that being said, we can't expect every single one of those specialties to reach their max when we're in PT school. So yes, do I think that it could have been better like put together in our classes? Absolutely. I think that a lot of the classes could have been done much better. Would I go back to physical therapy school and do things all over the way I did? I have no idea. I can't tell you no because I can't tell you yes either, because I don't know if the trajectory of my life would have changed the same way. I don't know if I wouldn't have gone to physical therapy school. My backup plan was actually to go to massage therapy school again, so I could get the manual therapy option, because that's really what I thought I needed. And I don't know if I would have done that or what I would have done, but at this point I know now that a lot of the things that I learned and that I utilize with my clients, I very much could have learned in continuing education courses as a trainer. I just would have had to be a little bit more cautious. If they are in a significant amount of pain and it seems more like a medical problem where it's like not getting better, or it's getting worse, or they have like other things like numbness and tingling, or their foot is dropping, or they just have like general pain and you're struggling with being able to help them work around it, then maybe I wouldn't have gone to DPT school. But I didn't know that was an option back then, which is why I'm talking about it. And one of the main reasons that I may have considered not going to physical therapy school was because the income to debt ratio is so high. So it's a significant amount of debt to go into PT school, and when you come out, you will not be making very much. There are ways to make more, but you will have to do things that are not necessarily what you want to do. So I went to PT school so I could do what I'm doing now. I did not go so I could go into home health, and that was not interesting to me. That is the way to make the most money in my profession. And so that's something that people have to consider if you're thinking about going to physical therapy school. You have to figure out like what is it that I'm really wanting to get out of this, and is it worth putting myself in that much debt? And then if you do think it's okay and you're ready to tackle it and you're like, this is the option, making sure that you minimize that debt's really important, because nobody talks about how overbearing and taxing and how much of a struggle that debt actually is. So if you're listening to this and you're considering it, really do your research and minimize the debt as much as possible. Don't just take out as much as you can. And don't necessarily, what I would say is take the information you read up on physical therapy salaries with a grain of salt. They're not highly likely. And if you want to be an orthopedic type of physical therapist where you're working with people who have hip pinching when they squat or something along those lines, then you're going to have to probably own your own practice because of the way that reimbursement is now. You will be seeing 2 to 3 to 4 patients an hour. You will have 40 hours of patient care, and then every bit of your documentation, we write notes for every patient. All of that will be on your own. Every email and phone call from doctors about your patients that you're working with, or patients calling and asking questions, all of that is on your lunch and on your time that you have to come in before and after. And so I was working 50 plus hours a week, and the amount that they pay is very low because insurances don't reimburse very much money. So these are really hard conversations, and it's getting a little bit more into the nitty gritty behind it, but I wanted this information out here in case you are interested and want to learn, and then I can direct people who ask me, because I do get asked this quite a bit. So keep that in mind. And then the last thing I just wanted to highlight is, hopefully this helps you understand that maybe if you are, one of the things that before I was in DPT school, was just my misunderstanding of where my abilities like stopped and what a physical therapist really does. And what the reason that I wanted to make this podcast, besides what I just said, is also to help us realize that there is more than just exercises. And sometimes I see other trainers and people in the fitness world try to become physical therapists and try to rehab people. And I think that understanding programming and mobility can go a long way. But just know that, like, when you send your clients to a physical therapist, if they are well-trained physical therapists, there should be a lot more going on besides just manual therapy. And the physical therapist should have more to offer than just manual therapy. There are more things than meets the eye than you might not understand or quite see when you're programming and or coaching somebody. So just know that if you're a personal trainer, that the difference between you and a physical therapist isn't just manual therapy. It is actually physiology information. It's the ability to read and disseminate research that you might not know exists, or how to work on things. It's prioritizing based on experience and understanding those things. If you're not somebody who specifically works with people in pain and rehabs them regularly, you just don't have the experience. So sometimes it's helpful to send people to a physical therapist, but it's always going to be helpful to find a physical therapist who you can trust and who works really well in alignment with you. And I find that actually works the best. I've worked with people who have trainers and they don't want to tell their trainers that they came to see me, which is really problematic because that means that the patient is the one who loses out. And it also is really hard for me because if I cannot communicate to a trainer about the things that I think might benefit the person that I'm working with, the patient, then I'm trying to work on things without having that communication, whereas very often, if the trainer could just implement a couple things in their programming, or just have like a couple pieces of information to pay attention to because they don't know everything, I don't know everything either, then they could have a better ROI and the client could get better faster. And I have had people I've worked with in the past that I'm like, I really wish that I could talk to their trainer and coach and we could have that communication because it would be really helpful. And I also learn stuff from the coaches and the trainers that I've worked with in the past. I don't know everything about fitness. By all means, I still learn a lot. And so sometimes when we have that conversation, I learn things too. And so when we can I learn things from other physical therapists, right? And clinicians too. So it's just really important to realize that we don't know everything. And to also realize that like, just because what you see is like you giving exercises and a physical therapist giving exercises, the reasoning and the understanding and the things going on behind why or the how and the little details might differ, and you just don't know that. So that's kind of a big reason why I wanted to make this podcast because I had so many responses to it. And a lot of people really do seek out a physical therapist also for them to fix them with their hands. In reality, it's just programming knowledge sometimes, or it's just, hey, you got to manage your stress a little bit better, or yeah, actually your sleep sucks and your nervous system is so upregulated, or something or you're not eating enough. Like those are little things that sometimes I have to communicate as well with people. So yeah, this is a podcast I've been wanting to do for a while. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to chat about this. You can always reach out to me. You are not alone if you're trying to figure out whether or not you should go to DPT school or what's going on. So if you have questions about that, you want to learn a little bit more, I'm an open book. I try to be pretty open about things. I just don't think that it's helpful if I don't share that experience that I had in PT school. But PT school really did like fry my nervous system, and I had no good like stress coping strategies going into it. And so I don't recommend going into PT school if you don't know how to manage your stress, because it will just exasperate everything. So yeah, anyways, I'd love to hear from you. I think that's everything. We're going to wrap this up and I will chat with you on the next one.